Okay, this is a negative I'm going to print up. It's a sale from my last show. So it's a reprint. Beautiful shot of La Cascade d'Ars. And this is the negative. Negative means blacks are white and whites are black. This is my enlarger. And here's my negative carrier. It's 4x5 negative carrier. Here's my negative. Beautiful negative. Great shot. Now I'm going to put it in my negative carrier. And you put it in upside down. And this thing keeps the negative really nice and flat. It's a good thing. And then I blow off the dust. And I inspect it over here under the light, like this, and like that, and like that. Now I put it in the enlarger, and I make sure the negative is properly seated. And I put it up at the approximate height here, which is 22 inches. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to line up the negative on my easel here. Turn my enlarger on. I usually have it wide open. And I just make sure that I line up the enlarger properly so I've maximized the negative and the composition is as good as possible. And that's basically, and I have to do a focus here. So I use my grain focuser, and that's really good for focusing. And I really concentrate on focusing big time, because focusing is the most difficult part of photography. So I focus in the center, and then I check the corners. Make sure that my enlarger is properly lined up all the planes. There's 3 planes. There's the paper plane, the lens plane, and the negative plane. And all those 3 planes have to be perfectly flat and lined up for it to be properly focused. And it's really important to have a nicely focused image. And that is absolutely perfect. And I line it up nicely, like this. And I make sure I'm not cutting any of the edges. And this is just perfectly done. Okay, my notes say the last time I printed this that it's contrast number 2. So now I'm going to put in my contrast filter. So I take out the tray. And I get my number 2 contrast filter. And here's my number 2. I keep everything really clean. In the old days, you used to get graded paper where you didn't have to work with contrast filters. And that is my preference. But now that silver gelatin isn't so used, the very limited in marketing and what's available in the industry. Okay, so now I can do my test strip. So now I got my paper, and I will slice a piece off of the paper, and this is going to be my test strip. And I will now expose my test strip. I always have to put the paper away so I don't expose it with the light. Here's my paper. My exposure's set, everything is set like according to my notes, and it's a 1.5 second exposure. Now I check where I'm going to do the exposure, so I always try and get the highest highs and the lowest lows, and so it's going to be right here like this. And make sure it's the right side up on the paper, because there's always one side that has a gelatin, the other doesn't. And this is a long exposure, 1.5 minutes. And here we go. So now I'm exposing my test paper, and I try not to touch the enlarger or the enlarging table. And now I'm doing my test strip. There's my timer. Okay, I just did expose my test strip. It's a wide shot of Cascade d'Ars, and I'm going to start processing my test strip. I put it swiftly in the developer. It was a long exposure of 1 minute and 45 seconds, and I'm agitating it for 15 seconds. At 25 seconds, 20 and 25 seconds, it should start to move. Come on in here, show it to us. See? Now the image is starting to form. Now at 30 seconds, I agitate it for another 10 seconds. That's good. The image is forming nicely. And I put it in the developer for 1.5 minutes. Instead of, usually it's 2 minutes, but my notes indicate that I want a softer image because the negative is pretty dense. So lots of contrast. So you can actually lower the contrast by putting it in the developer for less amount of time. So this is 1 minute. I agitate it for 10 seconds, and I will pull it out 5 seconds before the 1.5 minutes to drip it. So it drips properly. And here we go. And that's 1.5 minutes. Now it goes straight into the stop bath. Agitate it again. Now it's in the fix. And by eye, it seems pretty good, you know, the contrast and the range, even though I'm viewing it under red lights. But so far it looks so good, so I'm just going to leave it there for a good 40 seconds to clear as much of the silver halide salts as possible, so I get a good technical test strip, so I can base my printing on that test strip. Of course, it's really important when you're making the print to do exactly the same with the print as you did to the test strip. The only compensation is that it comes out of the developer 5 seconds earlier than test strips. Okay, let's turn on the light and see what I got. Wow, it looks beautiful from here. I'll put it in the water. The paper is wet and it gives you nice blacks, and the highs are a little more white generally. So yeah, you can't really make a good decision on a wet test print. So what I usually do is I put it in the microwave to dry off the test prints, which will give me a better and truer recognition of what it's going to look like when it's dry. So here's my microwave. And I'll just put my test strip in there. It's about 1.5 minutes on a relatively low setting. I don't want it to be crisp but dry. And now I go wash my hands. Alright, so here's my test strip. It's dry. It's the first test strip, and all my highs go up to the highest highs, and my lows have good densities, nice blacks there. And it looks like there's really nice volume all around, and it looks like I'm pretty lucky on my first test strip to get this definition. Of course, I was using the previous notes for the first print that I made, which I sold, and that's why I'm making a second print because I sold the first print. So it's perfect. So I'm just going to write down the technical details for my printing, and then I'll make the print. Okay, so it's Rolly paper, and contrast is 1.5, and the height is 22.1. And it's my condenser head set at a 4x5 negative. It's f of 5.6, so the lens is wide open, and the exposure is 1:45, 1 minute 45 seconds, and it's 1:30 in the Dectal, 1:30 2:1, Dectal 2:1, and now I'm going to compensate for my corners as usual, because the corners are usually about 1 stop colder than the rest of the picture, but I don't want to make a long exposure of 3 minutes. So I'm going to expose the corners for 2.5 minutes instead of 1 minute and 30 seconds, because it'd be double of 1:45. So I have to dodge it from 2:30 to 1:45, and that's my print. And I marked down that I used another paper. Okay.